measuring segment notes, please cross out the stuff that I crossed out because we're not doing that. Okay, moving on. First main idea that we're going to discuss is determining a coordinate. In example 2. All right, so in AB, I'm going to color code this as usual. So in AB, which is here, A to B, point C is 2/3 the distance from point A to point B. What is the coordinate of C? All right, so then I see here, obviously this is point C, so I'm going to mark that. And it said that this is 2/3. Okay, now, if that's 2/3, the whole thing, and it told us that from A to B is the whole thing. If it says 2/3 from A to B, then that means AB is the whole thing. So 2/3 of this means that there's a piece left over here. How much is that piece? Well, at least from a fraction standpoint, it has to be 1/3, right? Because 2/3 plus 1/3 will give us 1 whole, right? So that means I can technically cut this part in 2. And now I have 3/3. I have 1/3 here, got 1/3 here, right? Doesn't that add up to 2/3, right? And then I have another third here. We already knew that. So, okay. So, now that I have broken this thing up into 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, let's see if that's going to help us figure out what number C represents. A represents, let me circle that in green. A represents 6. B is 15. And now we have to figure out what the heck is C, right? Okay. Well, first things first. How long is AB? We can figure that out just by counting or by subtracting in this case. So AB equals, well, just subtract, like I just said, 15 minus 6, which means AB equals 9, okay? And notice, I did not put the line over AB. That's because we're counting. That's because we're doing distance. You don't put the line over it when you're just doing distance. All right, so now we know that whole thing is 9. So if the whole thing is 9 and we break 9 up into 3 equal parts, don't we get 3, 3, and 3? Right, if you do 3 plus 3 plus 3, isn't that 9? Okay, so a fancy way of saying that is just 1/3 of 9 is 3, because we broke it up into 3 parts and it equals 3. So that means this is worth 3, this is worth 3, and this is worth 3. So if that is the case, then 6 plus 3 will give us what? That should give us 9. So this little space, not space, but this part right here should be 9 on the number line. The next number on the number line, if we add another 3, is going to be 12. And then if we add another 3 to 12, we get 15. And we already have that written down, so we're good. So that means, just take another look, C is 12. Easy stuff. Okay, now we're going to look at congruent segments. 2 segments are congruent if they have the same measure. The symbol for the word congruent is here. This is really important. You can tell if 2 or more segments are congruent if they're marked with a line. So the line that they're talking about is this line right here. That's what they're talking about right there. All right, so we can see here that AB is congruent to BC. Okay, so AB, and segment AB at that, is congruent to BC. And yes, I put the segment symbol over both of these because we're not talking about a specific distance with numbers. We're just saying that the segments are congruent. All right, the example, are AC and BD congruent? So let's take a look. AC, where is that? Right there. All right, so let's take a look to see if they're congruent. So from A to C, how long is that? Okay, well, we can either count or we can subtract. So we got 2, right? Because, let me break this down. In between these 2 is -1, so that's 1, 2, 3. Let me write these numbers because somebody is confused right now. I feel it in my spirit. And then there's a 5 right here, okay? See, there's numbers in between because it's going up by 2s. Okay, so anyway, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Great. All right, now let's take a look at BD, which is here. All right, so from B to D, let's count it out. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put the numbers in between because, again, somebody's confused right now. That's a 9, by the way. Okay, so I'm going to count from B to D. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, so clearly both of these are equal to 7. So we are good. They are congruent. So how do you write that down? You simply would write segment AC with that symbol is congruent to, by using this symbol, BD. Yes, geometry is a language all by itself. You need to learn these symbols. I have them up, and they're always in your notes. All right, next, midpoint and bisectors, or bisect. All right, a midpoint is a point that's exactly in the middle. That's why it's called a midpoint, honey. Don't be weird. It divides the segment into two congruent segments. Bisect means cut in half. I'm going to say that a lot, so get used to hearing it. All right, so I'm going to even highlight that because that's really freaking important. Yes. Okie dokie, a point, line, ray, or other segment that intersects is said to be a segment bisector. You can see that right here. All right, to find the midpoint of a segment in a number line, just add the endpoints together, divide by 2. Okay, we call that an average. I don't know if you all remember that from middle school, but when you do that, you're averaging or you're finding the mean. Okay, so let's take an example. Basically, all right, find the coordinates of the midpoint. Some of y'all are going to be like, I'm just going to count it. So let's count it. Make it easy for yourself. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, what's halfway of 6? It's 3, right? 1, 2, 3, yeah. So there's the midpoint. Great. That's one way you can do it. If we use the whole averaging mean thingy that I was just talking about, just take these guys, boom, boom, add them, and divide by 2. That's going to be, let's see, 5 plus 1 is -4. So that's -4 over 2, and -4 divided by 2 is just -2. You see how we can do that 2 different ways? It's a beautiful thing. All right, example, find WX. So WX, this is WX right here. Okay, so let's see. The markings indicate that W and X are congruent. I just told you, these little lines right here mean congruent. You have to remember that. All right, now it tells us that WY, which is the whole thing, so that's the whole thing, and it equals 4.8. It says it right there. Okay, now WX, since those two are equal, you need to understand that that's half. If both sides of this are equal, that means that X is in the middle, which means WX is half of WY. So that will make our job very simple. To find WX, we just need to take half of 4.8. All right, so 4.8 divided by 2 is just 2.4. Okay, so again, 4.8 divided by 2, and that's how we got that. Next, find BC if B is the midpoint. All right, let me zoom in a bit. Okay, so it says find BC. So I'm going to highlight BC in blue so we understand where we're looking. Okay, great. And it says that B is the midpoint. Okay, so B is the midpoint. Okay, and it says AC, so it's the midpoint of AC. Okay, so that means AC is the whole thing. If it's the midpoint, if it's the middle of AC, then that means AC has to be the whole thing. So AC, from A all the way to C, is the whole thing. All right, this is something that you need to understand very quickly, and I'm going to help you, don't you worry. BC, right, this little section right here, BC, this is a part. All right, same thing over here, AB. Let me use a different color. Okay, AB is also a part. Now, I want you to notice, if I add those two parts together, don't they equal the whole thing? right? There's only two parts of this segment, so both of them together have to be the whole thing. So that means they are also, and not that means, they are also equal to each other because B is in the middle. That's the cool thing about midpoint. It makes things equal to each other. So we call this a part equals part problem. You're going to see this a lot the entire year, pretty much. So that means 4x minus 5, which was one part, equals, what was the other side? 11 plus 2x. Okay, so again, these two parts make up the whole, but they're also equal to each other because B is in the middle. It's the midpoint. All right, so now that we have that, we're going to solve it. This is just an equation. Algebra meets geometry. The first thing you need to do, if you have x's on both sides, then you need to subtract the smaller one. Okay, what I mean is we have 2x, we have 4x. Which one's smaller? 2. That's the one you're going to subtract. Okay, we already talked about this at the beginning of the school year, like the very beginning, but we're doing it again, obviously. Those will cancel. 4 minus 2 is 2, so that's 2x. Minus 5 equals 11. Now we have a two-step equation, so we're going to add 5 on both sides, right? Because we got to get rid of that 5. Okay, now we have 2x equals 11 plus 5 is 16. And then we divide both sides by 2, leaving us with x equals 8. Okay, cool, we're done. No, you're not done. It didn't tell you to find x. It said find BC. So let's go back and look. All right, so BC. Don't forget, BC is right here. BC is 11 plus 2x. Okay, so that means you need to plug this in. Plug 8 in for BC. Super important. People always forget this step. Many people have failed tests because of it. So let's see. We have 11 plus 2 times x. X was what again, guys? It was 8. Okay, and so now that's going to be 11 plus 16, which is just 27. So that is our answer. I'm not going to box that by itself, though, because I need to remind myself that 27 is the length of BC. Always label your answer. Don't just give me a random number as your answer. Please tell me what that number represents, hence BC. All right. Oh, another thing. Do not put a line over BC because we're talking about distance. Whenever you're talking about distance and it equals a number, do not put the line segment over it. I won't count off, but I might. All right, here we go. Now we're talking about, let's see, we got AB, which is here. Just want to identify stuff. That's why I use colors, y'all know. Bisect CD, which is here. And it asks us to find CD. Okay. So the first thing that I need to understand is bisects. Bisects means it cuts in half. Half. You know what? Let me write the whole thing. Cut in half. So that means this side, and use a different color actually, this side are equal because the little point in the middle is half. So this part and the green part are equal to each other. Very important to understand that. So yet again, we have a part equals part, and I'm just going to shorten that to P equals P. So that's going to be 3y plus 2 equals 6y minus 22. And those parts are equal. I just wrote that right there. All right, so now same thing. We have y's on both sides. So that means we need to find the smaller one, which is 3, right? Between 3 and 6, 3 is smaller. So that's the one we're going to take away. Okay, so now we need to go ahead and get rid of that minus 22 by adding it, of course. And that's going to leave us with 24 equals 3y. And then we need to divide both sides by 3. And then that's going to be y equals 8 because 24